Okay, we're recording. So we'll officially call the meeting to order at 5:01. Looks like we got Justin, myself. So Justin, Barbara, Dave, Rubino, Edie, Greg, and Howard. So we have a quorum. Hey, Greg.
Hi.
Hey, Justin.
First off, let's go ahead and approve the minutes from the last month's meeting. Oh, usually I include a link on the agenda. I guess I forgot to do that. Hopefully, did you guys all have an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting?
Yes.
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 Okay. Hopefully you're reading those and putting a lot of effort into writing them. Can you get a motion for approval?
So moved.
So,
Seconded.
All right. And all in favor, or does anybody oppose the minutes or have any comments? Okay.
Aye.
Beautiful
All right.
job.
Yeah. Still learning Robert's rules. All right. So next thing we wanted to do is take a minute and talk about the PowerPoint, the draft PowerPoint slide deck we got from Turk. And I apologize for not sending that out sooner. You guys can be upset with me about that. I need to do better about getting those out sooner. So hopefully you had a chance to look at them. Maybe I'll share them on my screen here.
somebody needs to mute. Please mute your,
I think it's Canvas.
yeah, please mute your.
There we go.
I was just going to say I was here.
Good.
We got you.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can present these. Did you guys have a chance to look at the slide deck? It really was quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, I thought.
Yep.
So just my pet project. I wish more than one slide had been devoted to housing needs. I think that's a real driver for bringing people into town.
We did provide some initial feedback to them. I was just trying to pull that up. I mean, there was nothing in here about COVID as well, which I thought would make a lot of sense.
Right.
Why don't we go ahead and capture our comments, and I'll take the notes.
I think on the housing issue, if we had to do it over again, if we had the survey to do over again, I would have asked a couple more questions and clearly distinguish between affordable housing and, smaller market priced housing. Because I think when the questions in the survey, remember the affordable housing issue was right front and center at that point. And probably some people were thinking of that when we talked about housing. So it never really clarified it, probably as much as we could with a couple other questions. But certainly in the SWOTs, I think they discussed that a little bit more detail. So if we do, as Candace suggests, maybe that's kind of the thrust, is to distinguish between affordable housing and market priced housing of smaller units.
Well, also, is there anything in here that shows just a graph of how many people live in what types of buildings? I mean,
Lives in what?
Detached single-family homes versus, and how many rentals?
Yes, I
versus
think there is. Yeah, I think in the
main body.
Yeah, in the study it goes into that. Yeah.
I mean, there's
It mentions it here.
The study does have some useful graphics, but I think this slide that we're seeing right now is the only slide in the PowerPoint that addresses this issue. And obviously none of those graphics are included.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
also affordable housing doesn't always have to be a separate entity. It can be built into a group of housing clusters. That doesn't mean, so you don't have like, here are the poor people and here are the middle people and here are the rich people. You know, you don't need to do that. It's like, this is another problem that's sitting out there, you know, like.
Well, in the end result, you're absolutely correct. But in trying to determine what people are in favor of or not in favor of, I think it helps to distinguish the two, because I think there'll be people that will be in favor of one without the other potentially. Just as we saw in the survey, when you I think it was only 20% or so people answered positively to the affordable housing question. But then when you had the question about what kind of alternative housing would you like to see on Halls Road, 2/3 of the people picked a choice. So I think there was just a lot of confusion about those two.
Do you think the phrase affordable housing is kind of a third rail, and we would be better off not going there and just saying that, just like this says, we need to provide diverse housing without using that loaded term?
Yeah, maybe you're right. And it is going to be dealt with, you know, maybe when we were looking at it, there was no one else was really examining affordable housing, so it could have potentially fallen in our lap. But now there is an affordable housing town committee, so that's really the more appropriate place for it to land, I think. So maybe, given a long answer,
I think
yes, I agree with you.
I think we're good here, guys. I mean, we got one slide, one full slide on it, and it says that the lack of housing diversity is constraining growth. You know,
maybe that's
like you said, and you guys have all mentioned, I mean, there's lots of good reasons to provide, you know, a diverse, you know, supply of housing in Old Lyme, but, you know, I think we just need to capture it as one of the key messages here. And then, you know, hopefully people go read the report, you know, and it's not just the PowerPoint. But
don't count on that.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be this PowerPoint's going to actually be presented, right?
Pardon?
There's somebody who's going to actually present the PowerPoint, am I right? So, I mean, we don't have to necessarily change the PowerPoint. Just say, listen, let's make sure that when we get to this slide, we're hitting all the points, then not glossing over anything.
Yeah, we can go into the whole housing issue, whoever's presenting, and then make the distinction there and talk about, you know, both a little bit.
So I've captured, you know, some comments on housing. I think you guys would all agree maybe a slide on COVID-19 and how it could impact the economics would be worthy. I thought some of their pictures were a little bit cheesy, like this one and this one and this one. You know, throw a picture of town hall in here, right?
Yeah.
So I provided them some feedback that the graphics should be a little more Old Lyme-esque. You know, I liked this. This was good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Right.
Now that first one that you showed was actually overlaid on the second one you showed. I don't know if you noticed that, but this literally, if you look at the next one, it's just overlaid on the other one. That's just sloppy.
Well, also on page 7 under outdoor recreation, they show a swamp of all the places to show. I can send you a decent picture of that. You know, I mean, it looks like a pond or something.
You were gonna go play ball over there?
Like,
Edie, didn't you indicate that you had some pictures that you
I have some great pictures, yeah.
I have some pretty good pictures up too.
Forward those to Justin and me, and then we could maybe use those as potential substitutions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll provide a summary of our feedback to them, and if you have some images, I'll send those along. Just go ahead and send the full res file too. They don't seem to have any trouble receiving the big pictures. Okay, so let's go back real quick. You know, some of the slides are a bit wordy, but, you know, I think we talked about previously, but it's probably one of these things that while we will be presenting them, you know, they will probably live for a long time, just standalone, hyperlinked off the website and stuff. So it's probably, right. I don't know, in my opinion, it's okay, I think, for them to be a little bit wordy in places. Okay. Does anybody else have any content comments?
I thought it was pretty good overall.
Yeah, too. I thought it really came down to a lot nicer information.
I kind of like how they had the bullets on one side and usually an image, and then they'll have like some excerpt from the data, you know. I thought that was a neat way to do it.
Yeah.
Justin, when you say we should do a slide on COVID, which I think makes sense, but what do we envision that looking like? Because the report itself, you know, doesn't address that. And then the question is, are we going to just put a caveat about COVID or an actual slide about the effects of COVID?
Probably the former. You know, some caveat that this was kind of like what we talked about the last.
Right.
The research was done before, and you know, while you know, a bullet about, you know, I would say we maybe add a bullet about how it might be how it could negatively affect the economy of Old Lyme, and then how might we actually try and benefit from it. And I actually heard something on NPR yesterday. Was it the governor? Somebody was speaking publicly about, I think it was the governor, about the number of businesses looking to relocate to Connecticut.
Yeah.
So what we've been talking about is, you know, is true.
Yeah, we've received, working with Advanced CT indicated that. And in fact, Advanced CT, as one of the things they've done is they have an online kind of matching site so that companies looking to move to Connecticut and what's available. And they're actually selling one of the things they're doing is selling a subscription to that to companies seeking to come to Connecticut. So there's been some activities or potentially on exit 71, a lot of interest there because of the easy on, easy off to 95.
Are we on that like when if they're playing matchmaker, are we is Old Lyme somehow in
represented?
The game there?
Well,
yeah.
You know, when we get to their proposal, that's kind of, I'm not sure, they have that as a subscription service, and then in their proposal, they're telling us they were going to potentially help us with something that sounded very similar. So I don't know exactly the mechanics of that and how that works. That's one of the things we have to find out.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a second. All right. Well, unless anybody has anything else they want to say about the presentation, we'll provide them some feedback on the images and COVID, and have them look again at the housing slide just to see if there's anything, you know, they could put on there that would be, you know, more helpful. And if you go through and review it, 'cause I know I gave you short notice, if you see any, you know, typos or any content issues, just let us know as soon as you can, and we'll feed that back to Courtney. We don't really have a timeline. Let me put the agenda up there. I don't think we have a timeline on, you know, when we're going to do a big meeting to, you know, actually, is that on the agenda? I think we didn't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
correct.
All right. So, yeah, we reviewed the PowerPoint. So I don't know what do you guys? I don't know. Gosh, sorry, I've been working all day. I'm on like 13 hours straight. Howard, why don't you? Are we? This is like we don't have a date when we're going to do a presentation or meeting with the public or anything right now.
Yeah, I think we gotta kind of discuss that. We've had, I think last time we talked a little bit about that, but you know, there's a series of options that we can choose, including, you know, going to the Board of Selectmen first, or all the boards and commissions, and then also potentially inviting the public. So there's, you know, I think there's a number of options we can go.
Are they going to be? Is the planning going to be doing any public meetings? I mean, I wonder if we would do something joint with them. 2020 POCD and summary of Old Lyme Economic Development Commission research. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
I like conceptually that sounds good because you know, we're not operating in a silo there. That there is a connection between the two, and hopefully the findings from what we did find our way into the planning process.
All right, I think we just have to table this for now because we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I know town hall is open now. You know, we're getting moving more towards the ability of actually having an in-person meeting, but you know, neither Howard and I are ready to or had any discussion in between since the last meeting about when this is going to happen. Actually, Search did reach. Go ahead.
Does anyone, Barbara? I'm wondering if you know. Old Lyme. Right. Wow. Here and then with
Here, I can't hear.
We're missing. I think we're missing everything you're saying. Edie.
I heard a lot of people on this call are very choppy. I don't know if they have. That's why I took my video off, because I was thinking it might be something to do with that. But you might want to turn your video off because it's really, really choppy, Edie.
Okay.
She had it off. She had it off. It's better when it's on, actually.
All right, turn your video back on.
Try again. I'm just wondering if the POCD, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
A little bit.
If they're also looking for other groups in Old Lyme, like the Old Lyme Land Trust, I'm a board member there, and I know they work very closely with the Open Space Commission, have actually helped them blaze trails and a lot of other things. Just wondering if that's an opportunity to also talk with planners about things they have done and what might go into the document from their information.
Maybe Barbara can comment on that.
Yeah, Barbara,
might
just wondering
walk us
what you
through
might
a
know
little bit
about
the
that.
process.
Yeah, but it's kind of out of order on the agenda. But Barbara, do you want to just jump into what the status of the POCD is and our input? Barbara on.
Did we lose her?
She's on mute. Barbara, you're on mute. She's still on mute that I can see. Now you're off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. I was wondering, I was off mute, but through the whole conversation from the beginning, it clearly was that I wasn't being heard. So it must be my phone. I'm sorry. Okay, so in terms of the POCD, we have had different commissions come before us to give their input. We've also asked, the last one was the Conservation Commission, and pretty much what we're asking, and Howard, you know, you came before the Planning Commission also. We're kind of asking for the mission statements and their input, and we do plan on having a public hearing with the first draft completed so that people can give input. We don't want it to just be the commission's ramming something down everyone's throat. We want the input from other people, but we, obviously, the Planning Commission as a group wants to be able to edit whatever. One of the problems we're finding is some of the drafts that people are submitting for what they want their commission to do are extremely lengthy. So we're trying to decide how to figure out how to work around that. So the POCD is supposed to be a guideline or an overview. And then one of the things we are talking about is doing appendices that can be online, so people can get more information, but directly from the commission. So like in economic development, there's a statement we started to incorporate and lost our time at our last meeting, incorporating some of Justin's comments that he had sent through to me. We obviously have to finish that, we haven't. But then at the end of that, we would put an action plan calling out the Economic Development Commission, which would then go into the appendices, which would be online. We're trying to figure out the most efficient way for the public to get all the information. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Anything you want to add to that?
I'd love to just show this to the land trust. Would that be all right to do? To show what your first draft, or just so they can maybe just send you a quick note? I don't think there's a lot of lengthy stuff for them to add to anything, but there are some things that seem to be a question from Harold, and I thought, gee, we could answer that pretty easily.
I think that's a good idea, quite honestly, because a lot of it, part of the problem with the POCD being 10 years old now, so much of the information is outdated. Our first draft or ongoing draft right now is getting rid of all the old information that's already been done, like GIS capability, revamping the schools. It's all been done. It's all being taken out of it now.
Yeah.
So then there's a lot of things that we don't know if they've been done. They keep talking about a bike path all through it, which we love, but nothing seems to have been done with that. So if we have commissions that know things have happened, like Rogers Lake saying that we should be putting filters on the drains, I'm trying to figure out who's responsible for that and has it been done. So that's kind of what we're working on right now, is just to disseminate the information, to figure out what's been actioned and what hasn't.
Great, thank you.
I just had a question, Barbara, kind of a general question. Maybe I just don't know enough about it, but when I look at the plan, it looks very general to me. I mean, it looks like you can almost justify almost any kind of growth because it is so general. Except, maybe the one thing that seems very specific is we don't want big box stores. That's kind of stated there. But outside of that, a lot of it seems general that could, include a whole range of things. So I just tell us a little bit, how does this POCT get actually used? What do you?
Yes.
We have it, and then how does it get implemented, and how do you make? How do you make decisions, specific decisions, using that POCD?
So that's a very good question, and one we've been tackling within the commission. The biggest problem, now remember, I've only been on planning, I think, 3 years now, maybe 4. And it was one of my first questions because it seems so nebulous. The answer I received is basically, when everybody laughed when I asked the question, they said, unfortunately, it is meant as a guide. The problem with making the POCD too specific is that people can claim rights that aren't allowed by other commissions. So that's why it's being meant as a guide. But I can get more information from Harold and other members of the commission. I know they have an issue with it because if we're too strict, all of a sudden zoning can come in and say, well, the plan doesn't say this. it can be used either way, which is a very frustrating thing for our commission, the planning commission.
Yeah. So now how does that, so someone, for instance, I don't know, wanted to open golf driving range or something, some business in Old Lyme. And where does the planning come in and where does zoning come in and how do they interact? I don't want to spend too much on this, but just so if we're inputting to this thing, I like to know exactly how it's being used. The plan.
Right. So that was actually my question. One of my questions.
We think alike.
We do. Because I was trying to get my head around, this is my first go around at a POCD because it was 10 years since the last one. So these are all valid questions. And what I was informed is that planning is supposed to set a guideline for zoning to follow. Part of, as everybody in the town on the commissions is well aware, planning and zoning don't always work hand in hand. They differ on different issues, and they're the same on certain issues. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is that planning should be a guide, but we can't take the rights away from zoning regulations. So planning allows somebody to come before them and say, hey, in the POCD, you're saying we want to promote a golf course, but you know, zoning or whatever other commission is saying, I don't know that we'd like that. So this gives the applicant the right to challenge something zoning saying or planning saying, because it's a guideline saying the town adopted it.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. And could I say one more thing about affordable?
Sure.
When I was muted, it wasn't coming through. So my biggest concern with affordable housing is that somebody sort of touched on the fact that they're thinking low income. Affordable housing is no way low income. Is there some way in the slide presentation we can give the parameters for affordable housing, like they have to make $65,000 a year? That's not low income. That's what a lot of the EE guys make. So if somehow we can put guidelines that affordable housing means this, or somehow phrase it so the town doesn't get up in arms that, you know, it's going to be low income.
And I think that was part of the issue with the proposal, that it got tainted that way. And as I remember it in the presentation, they said the average person would be potentially a single mom working in an insurance company making $65,000 a year.
I think the problem is people actually, it was very clear what affordable meant, but it didn't really matter. People still brought on visions of, you know, squalor and all this terrible, you know, NIMBY stuff. So unfortunately, even if you're clear, they still defer to their own vision of how terrible this idea is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Sad, very sad, but.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my only input.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I just, again, on the housing, like, you know, the way for the EDC, the finding was that you're not going to have a lot of growth in an area without some housing that goes along with it, right? So if you want a lot of foot traffic at Sound View, you may need some housing down there to make that happen. Or if you want a lot of additional retail and restaurants on Halls Road, you're going to need some housing to support that. That's all we need to present. I don't want to get into this idea that the EDC is saying we need affordable housing in Old Lyme. That's just not our charter here.
Yeah, especially now that there's an affordable housing committee. Like I say, it could have landed on us, but it hasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to stick with, you know, what the data and again, that mantra of, you know, what we learned from the subjective analyses of what people feel like they want? You know, what does the town want? And then what did the data show could be supported? And those two things might not agree. And that's okay.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good explanation. I think you're right.
But so in the draft we provided Barbara, you know, I didn't do a lot of additional writing. What we did was just kind of cut and paste some of the key findings from the reports we got from Advanced CT.
Right.
And Barbara, how was that received by planning? Because I know it was wordy. Is the Planning Commission going to need us to condense some of that down, or would you prefer to have all of the information and do the editing yourselves?
I think because I forwarded them the draft, and I believe in our meeting tomorrow, we have a workshop after our regular meeting. I'm hoping we do the EDC then. So they all have a copy, so they get to review it. And as a group, I have a feeling it's going to be condensed, I'll be honest, because it's a lot of information, but maybe keeping the highlights of it, but then putting like an appendice online to really back it up. That's what we're trying to get around, but we don't have a plan for that yet. So I don't want to say that's going to happen. That's what we're trying to figure out so we can get all the information, but still keep the POCD, not this huge document that nobody wants to read.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be a good neighbor, and you know, if they got what we sent and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, that's a lot of work. You know, okay. We'd be happy to
response at all.
Okay, because we'd be happy to help distill that down to more, you know, key points if they wish. But we just needed a rock, right? We wanted to give you some place to start, and feel free to, you know, provide us feedback, and we can give you another rock if that's what you need.
Yeah, and I think that's what the commission's doing as a whole with the Planning Commission's doing with all of them. They're giving their input, and then we're looking at it and say, wow, this is really good. We can put this in, or maybe this is too much and we can do something with this. But you will definitely get feedback. There's no question about that.
Howard, would you agree? Howard, would you agree that everything that we have to share with planning is already documented in these three reports?
Well, I was going to raise another, you know, what do we do with these reports? Should I go into that now for a second? Because it does dovetail in here. Basically, look, we have these reports. Remember when we went originally to the Board of Finance to get approval for the Advanced CT process and their initiatives, they approved it on the condition that they just didn't want to see reports. They wanted some deliverables. So to me, what I think we have to do one more step. I think we have to remember we have two goals in this committee, is to attract new businesses and support existing businesses. So I think we've got to go back to that. We might want to consider having a vision statement, and you know, what do we want to end up with in the town based on what people told us and what's possible, again, as you described. So what would be in that vision statement? Maybe something about how much growth we want, something about housing, something about, you know, what kind of community, in a sense, do we want to be? How do we attract youth? Do we want to attract youth? Something like that. Something about the arts. I'm just throwing things out there just to give you a feel for what a vision statement might be. But the idea is this is what we see where we'd like to go to. And then under that, we have two tracks. The first is to support existing businesses, and I think we should work on those first because I think they're easy, they're low-picking fruit. But the idea of having a welcoming committee to new businesses with a guideline to where the regulations are found and how to get all around that. A business spotlight. We've talked about things like a directory of businesses. So those would fall under that and they would be easier. I think attracting new businesses, especially with the virus and everything, is going to be somewhat more problematic and more long-term. And so I would do that second. The only thing I might add there, because we have Halls Road, the two most important areas, Halls Road and say the beach area. So maybe what we recommend is that the Board of Selectmen form a committee similar to Halls Road to work out a plan for Soundview. And that group can include the Beach Association, someone from EDC, planning, the appropriate committees and boards and commissions. So to me, I think, and then once we have that, I think that's what we turn over to the Board of Selectmen and saying, here's our path. This is what we think. And then see what they think and go from there. But I just don't think we should just turn the reports over and say, hey, that's it. We're done. Because they specifically, when we got the approval, were interested in what we're going to do with this information. So I'm sorry to go on that long speech, but.
No, I'll let others weigh in. I just, my comment to Barbara would have been, is it's just in the spirit of, does planning have what they need for the POCD, contained within our reports? And if we need to, if you want to work on a vision statement or some high priority, some goals to focus on, then we should provide that to them to make sure that that's there. Yeah.
That's just my idea. I'd be interested in seeing, hearing from other people. That's obviously there's different courses we can take, but that's the one I've kind of come down to.
I know planning has everything they need from you right now. If that's the question, we're fine with that. And if you want to put in a mission, like a short mission statement, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we've covered the PowerPoint. We've covered the update on the 2020 PCOD, POCD. While Barbara was speaking, I showed the markup for draft that you also received in your email. So if you have, if any of the commission members have comments, that feel free to send those forward. Like I said, basically what we've provided right now is just kind of a cut and paste from our report, the reports we got from Advanced CT. I did say at the last meeting that we would have like a EDC input file to planning, and then we would all look at it and like vote on it. At this point, I don't know if we need to do that, but if everybody was expecting to vote on a single Word file, then please speak up. But I think we've all voted and approved on the Advanced CT documents, and so that's all that's been provided so far.
I think you're right, Justin, and I think planning is going to put together what they feel is right for their document, and we've done plenty of work to give them new information for that document, and now it'll be up to planning folks to know what they can or can't include in that.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and I will mention, Howard sent me a comment prior to one of our meetings, and it was about explaining how COVID affected the economic development of the area. And it was excellent, and we did include it in our first draft. So just for your information, the concern about COVID was addressed, and that will be in the POCD under economic development.
Nice, good.
Great.
So Howard, I'll leave that on your plate if you wanted to, if you did want to work on a vision statement or something, and then, you know, I don't know if we need it, if planning needs it, but if there is something else you want to get in there.
Maybe for the planning, it might be pushing it to get it into the planning process, but we could have it at some point when we go to, say, the Board of Selectmen to do our presentation. I think it would be good to have it at that point, saying, here's the information that we gathered, and here's what we recommend that we do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be some statement, I think, on, you know, how much growth is the town willing to put up with, or, you know, what do we have to say about housing? How do we attract younger people to keep our schools going? That kind of thing. How do we leverage the arts community? There's just a whole bunch of things that could be in that, but it's not going to be a quick or easy or down a dirty, you know, method of going about putting that together.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, this is a little bit off topic, but did you guys attend the regional POCD meeting? I think it was the RiverCog.
RiverCog, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know some of planning did. I tried, and it said it was full, and it cut me right out. I tried 3 times, and it said this meeting is now full.
You can listen to it on YouTube. Yeah, there's a recording.
Yeah, I did send an email out to everybody with the link to the YouTube presentation. So if you didn't get it or didn't, let me know and I'll send it out to you again.
Okay, I'll take a look. And one last thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if it's of interest to the Economic Development Commission, but for planning, I'm working with the tax assessor right now, and we're trying to capture the amount of commercial space available in Old Lyme that could possibly be made available for people who want to come in and invest in the town and require commercial space. So that's one of my projects I'm working on right now with the Planning Commission. Is that something you would also be interested in seeing, or what?
Yeah.
Oh, that ties right in, and it also.
Yeah, we'd like that linked on our website.
Yeah. Well, I'm supposed to get the spreadsheet tomorrow morning. I asked them if they could have it in time for our meeting tonight, even though it wasn't on the agenda, just to give everybody. But Melinda, the tax assessor, said she will put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and we can delete columns that are not appropriate for our information. But this will break down by map, by zone, by lot size, by owner, by appraised values.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'll share that with this commission as well.
Yeah, it sounds like something that would be the interface maybe with Advanced CT on the implementation, where they're trying to match businesses and towns, our town.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. We're almost through the old business. The one other thing we had to talk about was the draft proposal from Advanced CT. We talked about the last 2 meetings. I think we voted on it last meeting. And then I can't remember who it was. Wasn't Barbara? Was it you, Candace, that was working with the finance to make sure our funds got carried over and we would be able to spend them? Who was working on that?
It wasn't me.
I can't. anyway, so Advanced CT did reach out a couple weeks ago, and to ask the EDC, when would be a good time to get together and talk about the next phase of their work with Old Lyme. And Howard and I responded and just said, well, we don't know yet that this proposal will be accepted by the that we'll have the money for sure. So I think at the time I wasn't sure if we were going to have the carryover funds. I think we do.
So Justin, this is Candace, and I was just struggling to get off mute. Yes, I did take the action item to reach out to the Board of Finance, and I contacted Andy Russell and copied you. And he said that the funds will carry over, and I'm trying to remember the content of that email. I don't think there was anything you had to do. I think it was going to automatically carry over. But if you don't have that email, I will dig it up and resend it to you.
I probably have it. I think I knew that. But that's good. Okay, that's good news. So sometime what I told Sadie was that we would meet and discuss at this meeting, and then we'd get back to them on when we felt like it was appropriate to talk. I guess, Howard, I don't know what you think, but I think we should just get together. When they say get together, we should just get together at one of our monthly meetings. So
yeah, I'd like them to walk through specifically how this works, some of the implementation, especially on that matching of businesses with properties. And I think we need a little bit more detail exactly what you're going to do.
Right. Do we need to have get the proposal signed by the Board of Selectmen?
Hey, Justin, just real quick before we try to answer that, how much money was there left over? I didn't think it was that much, was it?
No, it's only about $8,000.
Oh, and do we feel like we have a scope as to what they would do with the 8,000?
That's what Howard's saying, is we need a little more detail. I'll flash up the proposal here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that we'd need to get well, I don't know. Maybe we do need the selectmen to approve it, but it's already been approved and allocated, so.
So I just forwarded Andy's email back to you, Justin, and he said that you have to submit a request to Nicole to forward the money, but Board of Finance will not vote on it again because they've already voted on it.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Wouldn't make sense, really.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think they probably would vote if they were going to take it away and reallocate it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen in other groups that I am involved with.
Yeah, but we would break their legs, so they won't do it.
Okay, so Candace, can you handle that, putting the request into Nicole, or does that need to come from Howard and I?
I have no idea, but I can get it started and they can just tell me no.
I would just forward that email you got from
Andy
and say, hi, Nicole. we're requesting to carry over the funds. I think I got the monthly budget report just at the beginning of the July, and I think it showed us with the carryover, but they hadn't paid Advanced CT the final amount for the feasibility study, so it looks like we had more carryover than we actually do. But I would just say whatever is left over from once we've paid all of our bills, then that's the total amount. It's approximately 8,000.
Justin, do you remember offhand the total amount we've paid Advanced CT for everything up until this point?
If once somebody else starts talking in a minute from now, I'll find the email and share that with you. But I think they send it out at the end of every month. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if you guys can see here, Greg, this was the draft proposal, and it is a bit vague, but it talks about support with business retention and expansion. They may, it says advanced CT can help organize an event, to bring businesses together. They often mention this idea of a business breakfast, and we've never really bid at that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, but I mean, the Chamber of Commerce does that. I just didn't feel like it would be a great idea for the EDC. I mean, maybe it was something like that would work, but
I think it would be a good idea for the EDC to do something like that so that we would get ourselves in front of folks. But given COVID-19, I mean, I'm not so sure that anybody's going to be up for even going into the fall. I mean, I feel like we need to have a serious breakthrough with this doggone pandemic to get everybody out of being super paranoid.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we could always, we don't have to decide that now. We just table it until a more appropriate time.
Key point though with advanced CT is that I'm sure they are aware of this, but this $8,000, if that's the exact number, I mean, there can't be any mission creep to that because that's it. I mean, we're not going to get the town to give us an extra $5,000 if they go over. So, they're going to have to do a pretty good job of whatever their statement of work is and making sure that, we get $8,000 bang for the buck and they don't find themselves in a position where they have overages.
I think we got to nail down specifically what they're going to do and then prioritize it so that if, the breakfast comes out, that would go over, then we might eliminate it or do it ourselves or something.
Yeah, Greg, that's a good point. There is no more money. We did not put anything in the budget for this current fiscal year. I think we put $1,000 or $2,000 in there for some public meeting support, but that was it. Okay. Does anybody else have anything under the old business items? If not, I'm going to move on to the new business. Real quick, by September 30th, the EDC needs to provide the town with a summary for the Old Lyme annual report. And I assume you guys all read that. It's a great publication that goes out every year. The EDC, I think last year was the first year that the EDC had put anything into that report in quite some time. And so what I'll do between now and the next meeting is dust off our input from last year. And I think I'll send it out before the August meeting so that we can start thinking about what we want to put in this year's publication. And
maybe this idea of a mission statement might be a good direction.
It needs to be a summary of what we did last year.
Well, you know what? The communication piece that we sent out that got, just wide distribution is basically it, right? Kind of goes through what our two goals are and walks through what the 3 reports, and that's what we did. Yeah. I mean, I think it's mostly done.
They would like a picture. I think we did include a picture of maybe of like one of the SWAT workshops or something from last year.
All right.
Or maybe one of these screenshots of our WebEx with everybody's face blown up in this.
Oh God, yeah.
In the computer
I think our website is not updated with the 3 most recent members. Maybe we could make that as a to do.
Yeah, that usually does lag. Yeah, I'll send a note.
Yeah, we'll send a note to Michelle. She'll get it done.
Also, the map that we've used that I put together for CERC, that's another pretty generic image that could be useful, showing different groups.
On the topic of new members, we are at a full commission, by the way, 9 slots filled. That's great. That was one of our goals, from a couple of years ago when I joined the EDC. Okay, the other bullet I had here for under new business was, we talked around this several times today already, but the EDC to share results with the Board of Selectmen. Howard and I were talking a couple weeks ago that I think you can read it in one of the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes, but they will be looking at some point for us to provide a summary or update on, on what we did and the results that we had. So, I just put some thoughts here, to try and structure that conversation. I think we should summarize, what we did, and we've done that a number of times. If you can go to our meeting minutes or you can go to our website, and then what did we find that the town wanted? What did we find that people, what were the key findings out of the survey and the SWOT, right? Like what did people really say that they wanted to see in the town?
That's kind of where I was going with, which I called a vision statement, but it could be a different name. But yeah, exactly. What are the conclusions out of this? What does the town want? So to me, it's kind of, here's what they want. It's a vision statement that talks about, things like how much growth we should have, and how to, we need to attract younger people. We're obviously demographically on the older side, and a statement on housing, could be things that included. There are probably some others.
Yeah, and then, I think they should have, the Board of Selectmen should be walking away with some realistic picture of what the research showed would happen if we did nothing, right? So in a number of places in those reports, it says, well, if you do nothing, don't expect anything. Don't expect any growth.
Right.
And also, what happens if you have no growth? You actually get reverse growth. You get no one going to the schools. You have big, expensive facilities that aren't being used.
Yeah.
That's a big issue. And I think a lot of people say, let's not have growth. We like it the way it is, but they're not understanding that you'll get a negative effect out of that as well if you don't, keep younger people coming here and retain the older people in the town instead of letting them go off to other locations that have elderly housing. So those we might need to spell that out.
And everybody complains about, the cherry stones and, the vacant buildings at Soundview, but to be honest, that is what the economy of Old Lyme currently supports. Right. I mean, that's what the research showed, is that we are already at capacity for dining and retail. So you talk about, we want a coffee shop here, we want to be able to get a sandwich there. We don't have the growth to support that. We don't have the foot traffic to support that.
I fundamentally agree with what you said. So I'm not really going to respond and say I don't. But let's be honest, if the town had a little bit more of a vision, let's just use Soundview as a good example, right? You've got all these rundown buildings. Perhaps if the town was to get together with the developers and say, let's try to create a true mixed use environment where you've got, condos or apartments, where you've actually put a decent amount of people that have nice homes to live in, that want to live down there, they may stay year round and contribute to the economy there. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't stay. I don't know, maybe with the sewers and water, you'll find more that will. And that may change it, maybe 20, 30%.
You're right, Greg. And that might be the fourth bullet, is what do you do to, how do you implement this, right? Because to your point, to what you said, if you don't do something, you're not going to get, it's not going to happen on its own. You have, and I think that we should go into this meeting with the Board of Selectmen to make it clear to them that they need to take a leadership role in establishing the vision for what they want for these areas, because it's not going to come from the EDC or just planning or just zoning or Greg Simon or Justin Floyd. I mean, it's got to be, people should, I don't know. I don't want to say it, but you should, you should be, if you're an elected person in our town, you should be running on this agenda. I'm going to.
Well, and the idea that, people present, we either want change or no change, it's a false premise, because especially now after this virus, things are going to change, and they're probably going to change a lot quicker and potentially more drastically. And the issue is whether you manage it and influence, or you let it happen to us. That's the issue.
Right. That's
Change
right.
is going to happen. You're not going to prevent that. So how much do you want to try to control it or let it happen to us? That's the real issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, look, irrespective of COVID, it would be great if, EDC and planning and all the different departments of town could actually kind of get together and say, what do we think would be the right thing for a Sound View, a Laysville, off exit 71,
Right.
Cherry Stones, the gas station there that's defunct. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Maybe you guys know, but it just feels, again, it's harder with WebEx and Zoom and everything else, but it would be so great if we could actually get the 4 or 5 departments together that actually have a vote on this and say, what do we want this to look like over the next 0 to 10 years, and kind of agree on sort of like, I keep calling it a master plan, but like, here's a master plan that basically creates an indicator to developers or homeowners as to what we would like to. At least they know in the beginning of any process that there's an appetite for something. I think part of the challenge, and maybe this is the way it is in every town, maybe not. It doesn't seem like it is in Old Saybrook, but it's like, if we don't give them some sort of a roadmap or vision.
Right.
And again, I don't think it's just EDC. It's obviously these other groups I'm mentioning. But if we don't give people a vision as to what we would like to see and what we have an appetite for and what we would potentially approve, then it's really hard for anybody to invest, because they don't know what the outcome could potentially be of that investment. They'd be like, I'm going to do my due diligence, but since the town doesn't seem to have an appetite for this, I'm really not going to invest the money to do that, because I think I'm going to lose a lot of money ultimately if the town doesn't help support that process.
That's what I was kind of talking about with a vision statement. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
But again, we can come up with all these great ideas and great words and wordsmith this, but we don't have the power,
Right.
We don't have the ability to move the town in a direction if we don't have these other groups locked in concert with us, because otherwise it'll fall on deaf ears, or it'll just, hit a roadblock.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that planning was saying the exact same thing, that especially with the POCD, once we have the first draft, we want to get together in person with members of other commissions to do just what you're saying, because you can't be a standalone commission in this town. You have to work with all the other commissions. And then Soundview has a commission. Has anybody ever talked to them?
Oh yeah, I talked to Frank Papalardo and that quite a bit. And they're a relatively cohesive group of people. I mean, they all live in Soundview, and they definitely have an opinion, and they definitely want to try to do some things. Some of the people that wanted to do development down there wanted to do development so that they wanted to set up their development so it was ready for sewers. And the town basically said, no, you can't do that. And the town basically was telling them, you can't tear down your buildings. If you do, you're not guaranteed that you're going to get a building permit for the same footprint, over 6 months or a year. And then the whole state thing kind of got in the middle of this, and the state regulations came in, and they said that towns cannot deny people from rebuilding in the same footprint, even if it's 5 years later, because of whatever reason, for that. So that's why you saw some of the buildings on Soundview get torn down. Frank Noe tore down the old arcade building because he knew that he had solid legal ground to rebuild there. But he doesn't want to rebuild until the sewers and water are in, because why would he rebuild and spend, let's say, $3 million on a building to put a septic system in that he's just going to have to get rid of, once the sewer and water goes in, because you have to get rid of your septic once that goes in. It's mandated.
All right.
So we're kind of stuck in the mud in Soundview right now until the sewers go in. I mean, the water is going in right now because of the agreement Connecticut Water had with a company in San Diego that purchased Connecticut Water. So it's kind of ass backwards. They're putting in water first. Usually you put the sewers in first. So I don't know how this is going to pan out, but it's quite a mess. I live down in this area, and our road has been was dug up for a month and a half, and finally they patched it. But we don't have sewers in yet. We just have the water in, and it's not connected. You know, everyone's got to do laterals, and they got to do their sewer connections on their own, out of their own dime. So,
Greg, does it make sense to recommend that they form a committee similar to Halls Road, where you have that Soundview group, maybe the beach communities, someone from EDC, planning, zoning, whatever, someone from the Board of Selectmen, have a committee that goes through this whole process just as you described, and just make some decisions of what you want it to look like?
I mean, I think that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, again, with or without COVID, I mean, I think we were, even if there was no COVID, we'd be in the same scenario, right?
Yeah.
So I think COVID, in a way, should bring us together even more and say, wow, we've got a major disruption in the economies of every town, every state, every city, you know, every business, you know, for the foreseeable future. And this could last for however many years. I don't think they have studies on how long pandemics impacted economies, because most of them were years and years ago, and we probably don't have the statistics. But I'm willing to argue it's a 10-year horizon of impact, right? That we're still going to feel for 10 years, especially if this thing takes another year or two to get, you know, somewhat, you know, resolved. So, I mean, I think more than ever, we should be coming together as those 5 or 6 groups to say, okay, you know, we're being disrupted by a really, really nasty pandemic, and we ought to be thinking much more in concert than we ever have in the past.
Yeah.
Here, here.
So
that
sounds like an old rotary phone.
Yeah, can somebody please?
Not me. Anyway, you know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, I think most people in all these different groups should really care about. I mean, again, we're not trying to build, you know, to your point, you know, low income housing. I think that whoever, you know, a couple of gals earlier were talking about what that really means. You're 100% correct. I mean, you still got to make $65,000 a year. So, I mean, you're not looking to put up a bunch of shacks. I mean, look, we got a lot of shacks in this town that I'd
Right.
be willing to say that are worse than any low income housing that we'd ever build. So,
Right.
you know, and there's a lot of buildings in this town that should be condemned and torn down. I was hopeful more would get torn down with, you know, this, I guess, the state law that overrode the towns. But unfortunately, we haven't seen too many come down. But there's a half a dozen at least in, you know, Hartford Avenue and Soundview area. And there's a bunch in other parts of the town, not to mention people's cars that are sitting around that have been sitting there for 20 years that shouldn't be sitting in someone's yard. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like the town does a lot, in my view, as far as, you know, regulating or pushing, getting some of these areas cleaned up. The blight. I think that's another issue, right, that we need to push on, because, you know, look, you know, if we're not going to develop it, then let's at least make it a lawn and make it a park and let Mother Nature enjoy it, and maybe humans as well.
Yeah.
So we don't have a date when, you know, we're going to formally share the results with the Board of Selectmen, but
I think that should be a big part of that recommendation to them.
Yeah.
And by the way, the onus is more on the Board of Selectmen. Honestly, it's on the selectmen, first selectmen, and the 2 selectmen. The onus should be on them. They're theoretically the leaders of the town. They've been elected to be leaders of the town, and honestly, they should give a darn about this, and they should be the ones that are directing. And this is what we said back in the finance meeting. If you remember 2 years ago, Howard and Justin, you know, that was the whole pitch to finance, was like, you know, we need to not be siloed. Right. You know, we need to be a horizontal play that brings everybody together, so that we're all singing from the same song sheet, and that the town seems like it's got a cohesive strategy. And, you know, Tim, Chris, and you know, what's Mary Jo, these 3 people should be in concert driving this. You know, I mean, it's fine for us to nudge them and tell them this is what we think you ought to be doing, but in reality, they should be doing this. This should be
They
a
should
big
be
part
leading
of what
it.
they're saying.
I think it would help them if we do at least plant a flag in the ground and come up with some recommendations. At least that's a starting point. Not that they have to adopt them all, but
I
to
agree.
just give them an idea of what kind of issues are out there and what we think would work best. And then at least they have something to go off, because my concern, if we just hand over just the studies, nothing will happen. They'll just
Right.
say
But
thank you and
I
that's it.
don't think we need to write a 4-page or 8-page document. I think we should
I
just
don't-
give them
I
a
don't
one
see it either.
pager that
Just-
says,
No,
you know,
some
hit them right
bullet
between
points.
the eyes and say, this is what needs to happen.
It seems like if you go to a Board of Selectmen's meeting, the discussion is so dominated by the whole sewer thing. I mean, that's like easily half of what goes on there. And then there's the bridge at Mile Creek. You know, that's been
Right.
a leading agenda item on the Board of Selectmen since like the beginning of the year. So I'm not saying it's right, but it feels like there just doesn't feel like there's bandwidth for them to consume this.
Well, if they want to think about the long-term viability of Old Lyme, I think this should be in their top 3 priorities. Honestly,
Yeah.
You know, there's going to always be some priority that jumps in between because there's been an accident or something, or a bridge falls down, or there's a fire on Lime Street, God forbid, you know. I mean, but at the end of the day, this should be one of their top 3 priorities. I mean, figuring out what this town's going to look like in the next 0 to 20 years.
Agree.
And I, you know, look at, I've said this directly to Tim. You know, I said, you know, congratulations on becoming the first selectman. I said, I hope as the first select, and I said this right to his face, and we have a very good friendship, but I said to him, I said, you know, I hope in your new term that you don't consider the beaches the way you did for your, you know, 1,000 terms that you had prior, because you clearly didn't give a shit about the beaches and cleaning up the mess down here. And I said, you know, it's time, you know, it's time for people to stop ignoring the blight and the fact that we have really some real eyesores in this town that don't need to be here. I mean, I'm not saying you got to build mansions, but you know, we could be cleaning this up and make it look like some of the other beach communities along the Connecticut or Rhode Island coastline. And it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot. It just takes a little bit of vision. And so, you know, I'm pretty blunt about it with him, and he knows how I feel. So I have no qualms in making my point clear to him or Chris Kerr. You know, that I think that they've just kind of like, you know, they just sweep it under the rug kind of attitude. And I said, that's just not right.
Hey, Greg, that reminds me, I need to get it on the record that one of the things that was missing from that PowerPoint slide deck was anything on Sound View. They had a slide on Halls Road, but it was silent on Sound View for recommendations. So,
I mean, because look, this is a property that could be valued at a lot of money if we developed it correctly, and that would increase the tax base for the town. I mean, look, our tax base isn't going to go up, you know, based on the fact that no businesses are moving in here for the most part. So, I mean, why not develop some of these areas that are close to the, you know, beautiful sound, make them look beautiful, you get a much higher tax base.
So Greg is obviously excited. Go ahead.
Well, I was pretty quiet for a lot of this meeting because I caught a bunny rabbit in my house, and there's a lot of bunny rabbits down here, and there was a baby in my house, you know, like medium-sized baby, and I have 2 cats. My wife has 2 cats, and they got the bunny rabbit cornered, and unfortunately they didn't kill it. But I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So I had to put you guys on mute. So sorry about that. I didn't really want that to be on the record, though, by the way.
Well, no, Barbara's got something to say, but what I'll do is work on this like 1-pager. Like, seriously, I'm with you. Just like seriously, 1 page. These were the most important things we heard about from people on the survey and SWOT. Here's what we think that, you know, the research supports, and what will happen if you don't do anything. And we'll get that going for the next meeting, so when they do call us to say, hey, we need you to come present, we'll be ready. And And I think it would be good if as many of us as possible actually went to the meeting, you know, in support.
Yeah, definitely.
With pitchforks.
They are doing meetings in town hall now, because I was at one yesterday. You know, everybody socially distancing 10, 12 feet apart and wearing masks. But it seemed to be an effective meeting. So I think we could potentially get to that mode at some point.
Great.
Barbara, I think you had something to say that.
Just very quickly, I agree 100% with Greg. And the fact, I've been talking to realtors, the houses in Old Lyme are flying off the market. They're going on for 2 hours and being sold now. So this is another opportunity, and it's people fleeing from either New York or the New York area. This is a time when these people are used to paying high prices because the homes are going at some higher than they're being marketed at. So, you know, by increasing our tax base and really jumping on economic development, we could attract more people that can spend money in the town.
Exactly. And they're also, businesses are also
100% agree. 100% agree with your comment.
Yeah. Businesses are also looking at us. There's, you know, reports that, like I say, Exit 71 is a very attractive area with easy access to 95.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there's an economic boom that's starting to happen in Connecticut, you know, down in Fairfield and Litchfield County, which is where I come from originally. You know, I'm in touch with a lot of realtors down there. And yeah, there's homes that are selling very quickly, and there's multiple bids, which, I mean, multiple bids in Connecticut. I mean, you hear about that in California, you might hear about that in Florida, but you just never hear about that in Connecticut. So I think there is an opportunity that we need to seize for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. We've already covered the regional POCD. Well, the last two things was update on Halls Road from Edie, if you had anything, and then for Howard on if you wanted to share any parting thoughts on that regional POCD that you attended. And that'll be all we have.
I can do Halls Road really quickly. We did not have a month because we had no new information to discuss, but we do have plans and a couple other things talking about the rezoning options for Halls Road, and we'll be working on that tomorrow evening. So stay tuned.
I'll try to be fast too. And the River Cog, this is their first attempt at a POCD for the member municipalities. And what they're aiming at are two things: just enhancing cooperation among the towns and coordinating. So it's a new process. They are going to come to each town. There is a representative, and try to get input to their regional plan. It doesn't have authority over local plans, but it's more of a cooperation and coordination effort. And like you might want to just, there'll be at least one more public meeting like we had, as this first one was. And if you want to watch that video, you can get a little better feel for it.
I know we had part of our feasibility study was, region based. I wonder if they would find that helpful.
I was thinking that. I think we should, when we kind of get finished here with whatever we're going to do, if we're going to have some kind of additional statement, recommendations or whatever, then we should, I think we would share that with them and get their feedback. That would be helpful. I think they have some expertise that we certainly don't have, and they could look at, our ideas through how they impact the region and what they may have suggestions for us too. So I think that would be a good idea.
So they said that they had read the POCDs for all 17 member towns. And I was just wondering, when they read ours, did they read the one that's 10 years old, or did they read the current one, or something in between?
10 years old.
I would imagine, I don't remember, but I think all towns are kind of working on their 10-year plan now, so they probably don't have the current one.
Yeah.
We don't have a current one made, so it's
No,
Right.
definitely
not
the
out there. It's not
2010.
public.
Right. It will be finished like at the end of this year, probably, right, Barbara, or early spring or something?
We're hoping for October.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They don't have a set date for their plan. I think it sounded like they were going to wait for this process in the individual municipalities to go forward somewhat. And the river
If they're working with data that's 10 years old, then they should think that our report is like solid gold.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it would make sense for them to be, like finalizing whatever they're going to do, into the, early next year after everybody's
Right.
POCDs have been updated. Yeah. But okay. All right. So to summarize, I've got a few action items. I'm going to work on the annual report update and have a draft for us to look at next month. That should be easy because Howard, we've already essentially done that with the one-page summary that we talked about last meeting.
Right.
I'll start working on a one-pager for a future Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm a little worried that we're going to get a call like, the day before their meeting and say, hey, can you guys come give us an update? So I'm going to start working on that, and we'll have that to look at our next meeting.
Couldn't we just suggest a time we'd like to present, and that way we'll have some sense of what we're doing? Like,
yeah, if somebody wants to.
Could we present it next?
I'm just not in a hurry because,
right,
like I said, with the COVID, everything's changing so fast. I mean,
right.
They just really opened up town hall, so I hadn't even thought about going down there in person. But let's see if we can get something on paper first, and then we can.
Right. Yeah. We
can jump on. Then I feel comfortable going more proactive and saying, okay, we're ready.
Right.
I think we're going to get the website updated with the new members. I took a note here. Candace is going to send an email to Nicole. Is that right?
I already did it. It's in your box.
Okay. Awesome. I thought, Barbara, are you a real estate agent? Is that?
No, God, no.
We used to have a standing, I couldn't remember. We used to have a standing agenda item for like an update on real estate, which I think at the time, I forget her name, but she was.
Susan Howard.
Who was it?
Susan Howard.
Yeah, Susan, and then Heather. Yeah, so and I thought that was kind of neat actually, and if there's somebody that could speak to that for the one of our EDC meetings, it would be interesting to keep the pulse of what the local market is doing, because I think it does.
It would be interesting. Yeah, maybe we could ask. Maybe I'll ask Heather or if she would furnish us that, and I think it should also include commercial.
I was just going to say the same thing. You need a different realtor for commercial. You got residential realtors, you got commercial, so we need one from each, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Somehow we need to figure out how we can, if we don't have a commission member who's in this, like you said, Howard, and getting a touch point once a month or once every other month with commercial and residential.
Can we just go to one of the local offices, and maybe if we had a list of metrics, we just would ask them to give us each month how many they sold, how many they, what the prices were, what the locations were.
Yeah, there is a
That's
report
online.
like that's generated, and that's what Susan and Heather used to share with us. So that is available. Maybe we can just see if we can get that on a monthly basis.
Yeah, and just in the spirit of that, if there's any other like economic leading indicators that are like kind of micro old Lyme-esque that we could or should be paying attention to. You know, that might be something to think about. You know, we talk about like, how COVID's impacting things, but we don't really have any data in front of us to see it quickly. I don't know how we would get that either, but job losses, for example. So, I mean, they have, when people file for unemployment and the weekly or monthly numbers come out, is it by zip code? Is there some way that we'd be able to see, see some of that kind of stuff and how it's affecting us?
Who may know that Advanced CT, that's kind of up their alley these days.
Yeah,
They may be able to help us with that.
All right. Well, that was just something I took a note of. We can talk about that more in the future. Are there any other action items that? I forgot to mention. Yeah, we'll if you have any comments on the PowerPoint presentation other than what we've discussed today, let Howard and I know as soon as you as soon as you can, because I'm going to send them some feedback for the next couple of days.
Put some stuff in there about sound view. Is that what you're going to do with your feedback?
Yeah. So sound view, the images, have them look at the housing slide again, a slide on COVID, and we kind of talked around that. I don't know. We'll leave it up to them for what they think should be on that slide, and then we can look at it, right, and see if it hits the mark or not.
Yeah. And also, if people would look at their proposal and see if they agree with it or think it should be modified in some way, let us know too. I think it needs some clarification, but
yeah, we'll invite them to the next meeting. This is the first meeting they haven't been to in a year. So we'll make sure we'll invite them to the next meeting and use that as an opportunity to get some clarity on what that proposal is, and I'll let them know that we have the carryover funds.
Yep.
All right. Next meeting, it's going to be a short turnaround, right? Because this one was delayed a week, so our next meeting is going to be August 5th. I'd be curious to get a poll from you guys if you would want to try and meet in person at Town Hall or to do the WebEx again. You know what I can do?
vote in
create.
person.
Person said.
If we're in the meeting hall, it'd be fine. We could stay apart.
I agree that we could probably distance ourselves adequately within the meeting hall.
Yeah, I agree.
if we can't, if someone can't or doesn't feel comfortable, it can call in. We could just do a combination. Whoever wants to be there can be there, and whoever doesn't,
That's the right protocol. You just give people the option and they can dial in.
I think we're probably going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we're probably going to be including dial-in options like for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was just going to say the caveat being that 3 or 4 weeks in this COVID world is a lifetime. So we just have to. Things could be a lot.
We may have to punt, to your point, right? If we get to
Right.
August 1st.
So I just created a poll. Can you guys see it?
Yeah. I just
Do the next meeting in person, yes or no?
mine disappeared. I didn't know that was you.
For some reason, I can't do it. Let's see.
I have
So
to
far, we
sign
have
off,
five yeses and 0 nos. So
I'd probably be a no, but I would wait. But again, I could call in. No problem.
So just
I
so
don't
I'm
see
clear,
the
and
poll.
yeah,
I
if you're
can't see the
on,
poll, but I vote yes.
you vote yes in person.
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do, all right, and I'm just assuming everybody understood the question with the proper polarization there. So what the plan will be to do the next meeting in person on August 5th, unless something changes and it closes down. Now, what I would also offer is we could, with the Wi-Fi there, we could still call in to a WebEx, and if somebody didn't feel comfortable coming to town hall, we'll still conference call you in. So I'll work with Michelle to set that up.
That's kind of the going protocol with everybody these days, is that you have to make everything optional. Using tech, everyone's gotten proficient at using technology that didn't prior, so I think it's easy to do it optional, and then people can show up, and then you can have people, video in.
Yep.
So I have to sign off, but I will talk to you next time we meet.
Okay, everyone. Yeah. All right. This is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's right. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice job running the meeting.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.